think it's probably the thing that made me the most resilient person I could be, just like standing up in the face of parents that would be like, why is this girl pitching? The stuff I had to go through, like I'd strike out the boys and I had long braids and they'd be like, we can't see the ball. You need to put the braids under your hair.
Hi, Coach Mike Ritchie here from D3 Multisport. On today's podcast, we're chatting with D3 athlete Karen Rice, who just finished Ironman Hawaii World Championships in Kona. Karen has been a lifelong athlete, and she has a story of being resilient and relentless. She's played 2 Division I sports while at Harvard, and then found her way to triathlon later on. Oh yeah, on her birthday this year, she went out and ran 100 miles. What an amazing woman. Hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get to our conversation with Karen. Hi, Coach Mike Ritchie here from D3 Multisport with longtime D3 athlete Karen Rice, who recently just came across the finish line at Kona this week. Congratulations on that. Karen has 9 Ironmans to her credit, and she qualified at Coeur d'Alene this year, and I'm sure that was a quick turnaround to think about doing another Ironman only a few months later. What do you have to say, Karen?
Yeah, I mean, it was the end of June, and I think you're so excited you got into Kona, and then it's kind of like, oh, I get to do this again. But at no point was I bummed about that. So
Right.
yeah, it was great news all around.
That's awesome. So
it meant I had the whole summer to think about it, though, which was like, it's something. I mean, it's exciting, but something on your mind that's that far out just consumes a lot of your thinking because you're so excited about it. So as I got closer to Kona, I remember telling people at work, I'm really having trouble concentrating. I'm doing my best, but I'm so excited. And that's usually I can compartmentalize pretty well, but this was just such a big thing that, it was good. It's such an amazing experience.
Yeah, I bet. So take me back a little bit. I know you're a high-level athlete. You played college softball, and what other sports did you play growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I started liking sports like when I was 3. Like I was always someone that liked a ball more than a doll. My parents quickly learned that. So back in the day, they called us tomboys. I hear that term's going out of favor now because so many girls are doing sports. No, it's not different for a girl to do sports. I mean, there was, I was the only girl on pretty much every team I was on, which, I never really thought anything of it, but looking back on it, it was a very big deal. And certainly was very formative in terms of character building. I think it's probably the thing that made me the most resilient person I could be, just like standing up in the face of parents that would be like, why is this girl pitching? The stuff I had to go through, like I'd strike out the boys and I had long braids and they'd be like, we can't see the ball. You need to put the braids under your hair. Or we'd be on a road trip and I'd have to change in like the janitor closet because all the boys were in the locker room. I mean, it was just like, why is this, and I didn't really think anything of it at the time, but it's definitely, I think I wrote about it in my college essay. I mean, it's really what has kind of made me a person that's determined to do anything. And if you tell me I can't do something, that makes me want to do it even more. So it's carried over into work as well with some of the challenges I take on. So sports has always been super big part of my life, something I've enjoyed. I played all team sports growing up, soccer, basketball, softball. Basketball was my favorite, but I was better at softball and soccer. So I played Division I softball in college, and that was really fun. We made it to the NCAA Division I tournament back when there was only 32 teams in the tournament, and we went to what would now be the super regional. So we played at the time. We lost to Oklahoma, and the coach is still the same now, and of course they're this powerhouse in softball. And then I also played a year of Division I soccer. I was a goalie, so key there is I was not an endurance person.
Right.
Even though I had to pass all the running tests. But Yeah, I was like the third string goalie, so they just beat up on me to save the best goalie for
In
the game.
practice, you were the beat
That
up. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right. That's right. So I had my purpose.
And did you play soccer with boys too, or was there girls
Oh
soccer?
yeah. Yeah, there was no girls on anything when I went through. And I mean, this is post Title IX, but I grew up in a small
Yeah,
town.
yeah.
So it's very different today.
Yeah, it's I have a niece that's playing right now, and she plays on a team with all boys because it's a small town, and she's the only girl out there. She's one of the better defenders, and the parents do complain still. And you're just like, give this girl, some kudos for being out there, right? Like,
Yeah.
holy crap, she's holding her own.
Well, it was
So,
interesting. We had the coach of my soccer team. He was the coach of Williams College. So I grew up in Williamstown, Mass, and
mhm.
he took the Williams team to England to play, and he decided to take. We were sixth graders at the time, the sixth grade team too, and the English people heard that I was coming, and they were literally like, "We are not going to play you guys if you let a girl play on your team." And he was like, "No, you, we're taking care, and like you deal with it." And I mean, I was out there, and all the girls that came up to me after the game, it was like I like just couldn't believe that I was able to play. And it's just been so fun to watch over the years the evolution of soccer in England, and to think like the women's team filled Wembley Stadium. I mean, it's just, and when I was in college, we traveled to Europe too, and we at the time, we're Division One, so we were good. We were top 10 at a point, but we played the national teams of every all the UK places. So we played the national teams and we beat them, but that was college, so that was '99, and then now if we play them, we'd get crushed. So it's just like my whole life, I've seen the evolution of women kind of going through sports, and it's been really amazing to see. So,
Do
and that
you
kind of, yeah.
do you feel like as a sixth grader, were you hurt? Were you hearing this that they weren't going
Oh
to play
yeah,
you?
yeah.
How did that make you feel? I mean,
I mean,
that's
I was like,
brutal.
I was like, this is so stupid. I love to play. Like, I just didn't understand like why
Yeah,
it was such a big deal. Like, at no point did it seem weird to me. And all the guys were like, I was a good goalie. They're like, Karen needs to come. Like, we're not going without her. So, the guys kind of were like, she's just a player on the team. They didn't, my teammates never treated me as this is odd. It was always the parents of the players.
right, right,
So,
right. Especially if
yeah.
you played over a boy, right? Like that. Those
Oh,
families
that
probably,
they had
probably didn't
problems with
like
that.
that.
That is true. Yes. And
Yeah.
when I made
But
their sons look bad, that was
well,
was
that doesn't
very,
matter what
very fun.
gender. It doesn't matter what gender that is. If you're not the starting catcher, then why is my kid not? It's amazing. Even to this day, right? I mean, you just see
Yeah.
this all the time. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So when did you gosh, you're a big
Yeah.
skier. You do a lot of
Yeah.
different things, mountain
Yeah.
bike.
Yeah.
When did you get started in triathlon?
I mean, I think this kind of goes along the same path, really. It's like to have sports be such an important part of my life, and then college, it's done. Like you're 21 and your athletic career is kind of over, and it's like, well, now what? You still love sports, and you've really um, everything you've known. I mean, you can play in rec leagues, but that's not Division 1 softball. You're
Right.
used to you're used to so much more. So, I mean, I just started to do other things. It was like I had to find new ways to integrate athletics and an active lifestyle into my life, which was something I absolutely wanted to do, and I was lost without some sort of physical activity. So that's when I just started dabbling in some of the individual sports, but not very seriously until I'd say even through medical school. Like I was really busy with school, so there wasn't a lot of time to do stuff. But it was towards the tail end of residency when I got into triathlon. So that was 2012, and even then it was I did a couple triathlons. I was able to buy a bike because it was so funny. I could never have afforded a tri bike as a resident, but um, the guy at the local bike store, I was in Maine at the time, he's like, here, take the bike, just pay me when you can. I mean, this is amazing. Like, this guy did this. And I'm like, are you sure? He's like, I know where you work. Like, you'll pay me back. So, I mean, thanks. Really, I mean, it was huge that he let me um, get this bike that I never would have been able to afford, just because he was a nice guy. And
Yeah.
then as soon as I got the tri bike, it was like this is really cool. Like, so
Yeah.
then I really got into biking after that. I as much as I bike now, it's hard to believe that was not a part of my life at all until I got that bike. So that was kind of how triathlon started, and then
And you
I
did pay him back, right?
of course. I also came back several years later with the same bike, and I told him, "Here's your bike." And I had been to South Africa for 70.3 Worlds at the time. I'm like, it's even been to South Africa. Like, look what you let me do. So he was really pleased about that. He's retired
That's
now,
so awesome.
but
That's so awesome.
yeah.
What a
So
great
so then
story.
yeah. So and then just to finish the triathlon, I love skiing, and that's why I wanted to move out to Colorado. So I kind of knew as soon as I was done with training, and my last year was in New York City. Couldn't wait to get out. Um, I I moved out to Colorado, and I started skiing, and now I need something to do in the summer. And of course, it's like crazy Colorado, or triathlon endurance sports. So that's when it really took off, when I moved to Colorado in 2014. So
Awesome. Awesome.
yes.
So I know you've done some ultra races too, right? Some ultra
Yep.
running races, right?
Yep.
When did your last one?
I did one back in September. I mean,
Okay.
I was actually looking back at the calendar. I've only, in the last 2 years, I've only had a couple of months where I haven't had a marathon distance or longer run in there. I even I did a 100-mile run for my birthday in February
Wow.
of this year. Yeah, so that's an interesting experience in itself. But it's
Yeah,
apples and oranges with comparing to triathlon. I think that's a
totally. Totally.
common question. It's like you can't really compare them; they're very different.
Right. Totally different things. Yeah.
Yeah.
People ask me all the time about, I haven't run a marathon yet. I'm about to do an Ironman. I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's a completely different sport. Like in a
Yep.
marathon, you're going for a specific time and a pace and all this other stuff. In an Ironman, a lot of it's like aid station to aid station. How do I feel right now? How do I feel in 5 minutes?
Yep.
Oh, feels pretty bad.
Hmm.
What do I need to do to feel better? Right. I mean, it's just
Yep.
definitely smaller, you think of it in smaller segments versus I'm
Yep.
running 26 miles at
Absolutely.
X pace.
Yep.
Right on. So tell me a little bit about who you're working with coach
Hmm.
wise, and
Hmm.
then tell me, like what your lead up was like in going into Kona.
Yeah. So I've been working with Jim Hallberg since 2019,
Yeah.
and I was with another coach for a couple years prior to that. And on when we had an elite team, that was
Yes.
something I was on, and a lot of fun to have training partners. Get
Right.
something to get me out of bed to go swimming, which was like the worst
Totally.
thing. On a Friday, no less. I'm drained by Friday. Anyway, I think I think for me, what's been important, my work life is pretty demanding. I'd say on average, I work 50 to 55 hours a week. A lot of it, I try to make it predictable and spread it out over the course of the week, but there's a lot of weeks where I just have a super long day or something came
Mhm.
up that I wasn't expecting, and now it's dark by the time I get home and I can't ride my bike like was on the training peaks. So I think it's been important. Jim has been a good fit for me because he's not necessarily a high volume coach. He's like high quality, which
Mhm.
I don't think a high volume. Some athlete, I could be probably better if I was more volume. I don't know for sure, but
Well, I mean, if you had 15 less hours a week of work, maybe that would make a difference,
right.
right?
Actually, that would be the
Yeah.
thing.
It
Just
doesn't
take the
mean
work
more
out.
is better though.
That's
So just
right.
to be clear.
That's absolutely true, and I think so. I think that's really what the coaching experience helped with, like, because it really helped me focus on the important things. So, I think by and large, my weekly average of training is around 10 hours.
Yep.
There's a lot of 10 to 12-hour weeks in a triathlon build, like an Ironman build. It's probably closer to 14. But like, I mean, by and large, it's like it's a sustainable thing for me, and it's always, you know, it's not so much. I don't think, especially with my background of kind of being told I can't do things. Like I always want to do something bigger and more and prove something to myself or others, or myself. But it's so what I need to learn is, or what's important is, you can do this sport sustainably and still have other parts of your life. I mean, maybe in a build for an Ironman, you're spending a lot of weekends training, but for the most part, it's just part of my daily activity. And I think when you have a coach, you learn that um, you don't have to invest crazy hours. You train smarter. Um, it just makes everything more efficient. You don't have to think about your training. I mean, these days I've done this enough that I think I could probably put together a decent schedule for myself. But the reality is, like, I don't want, like, that's more thinking that I'd have to do, and it really helps. So so finding a coach that was willing to work with my schedule, and it's like, okay, we've got a few key workouts this week, like, just get them in on whatever days. And I think the other big thing with Jim he's been accepting of my kind of attitude towards sports. I'm someone that just likes to do new things more than maybe get really good at one thing. I want to be good at everything, but I think for me, like, part of the build up to Kona, it was not stressful in any way. It was not, it was fun, because I did a lot of gravel rides. So instead of having these 5-6 hour kind of monotonous, boring bike rides that I have on roads I ride every day practically, now I'm going to Nebraska to do these gravel rides in the middle of nowhere. And, it's still a lot of time and more time because you travel, but, like, it doesn't feel like training.
Right.
And so, he's willing to work with me around that. Sometimes maybe it wouldn't be ideal to do, like, certain things back to back days or back to back weekends. But maybe that 2 to 5% I could gain by resting or something, or just focusing exclusively on triathlon. It's not worth it to me to lose the fun of all the other things I like to do. Or, like, I want to go skiing for the weekend. Like, so things like that, Jim has been really helpful with. He's kind of just accepted that this is the type of athlete I am, that I want to make sure the training remains fun. And that's going to mean that I don't necessarily follow these really strict triathlon training plans. And I think a lot, when I went into coaching, to get a coach, I was the thing that made me the most nervous is, like, okay, now is this going to take over my life? Is this going to, like, take over all the things I love about sports? And it didn't, but it did take the first coach I had. That was more of the issue. And I think that was why the coach wasn't as good a fit for me. But when I moved with Jim, he really accepted, just the kind of athlete that I am, and worked that into my training. So it never felt like I was sacrificing anything. It was just doing things I love to do.
Right. And you're just listening to you, you're a high achiever, right? You went to an Ivy League school, you played Division I sports, like you're a doctor, you get all these things going on. And I think it would be safe to say, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it'd be safe to say, if you were left to your own devices, you'd probably do too much because you enjoy so many things that
Right.
you would do a 6 hour bike ride and then go ski for 8 hours the next day. And the next day you'd go run 20 miles. And then by Tuesday, you'd be like, I'm so tired.
Right. Or
Right.
at least I'd feel like that's what I had to do to be good.
Right. Just to fill that void of that adrenaline, right, and just feel it,
yeah, it's easy to get stuck in the trap of, like, when you're studying for the test, like, you could study forever. At some point,
yeah,
you just got to take the test, and I think it's just, I'm never at a point where I'm judging myself if I miss a workout, or maybe, I don't miss many, but it's just like, it's not that big a deal. It's like,
it's not
just
that big of a deal. People, I mean, it's so hard to get that across to a high achiever that sometimes you can just be instead of do. And when you be, you're doing more than when you're doing, right? You just learn to be. That was a hard lesson for me, as I got older, because I might be a little bit type A, I'm not sure.
we type A people, we can evolve.
Totally, totally. So give me a little bit about the lead up to the race. Like, what were the harder workouts? What was the longest workout you did? What was the workout you did that you said, man, I'm ready to do this, right? I mean, you had just done an Ironman, but I mean, Kona is
Yeah,
special, right? And it's going to take a
yeah,
little more with the hills and the wind and the heat. And you feel like you probably need to drive that fitness a little higher, right? Like just feel like
yeah,
I need to be
yeah.
the
You,
best
you
shape of my
just want
life.
to have the best day you're capable of having. I mean, I didn't have any time goals going into Kona. I really
Mm-hmm.
wanted to make sure um, I enjoyed it, and plus, it was easy not to have time goals because the elements are so much a factor here. There's really no like, if everything could be so much slower based on waves or wind or temperature. So
Mm-hmm.
it was easy to be like, yeah, I'm just gonna do the best I can on that day. And I mean, I think in general, the only times I get upset about a race is if I feel like I I didn't have the race I was capable of having. Um, you know, if if I have the race I'm capable of having, like when I qualified for Coeur d'Alene, I didn't know if I qualified right after the race, but what I did know is like I did the absolute best I could do, and that's all I can do. And
That's
like,
all you can do.
let's
Yeah.
hope that's enough. So, I think in that way, I'm never having to be motivated by external goals. It's always about just doing what I'm capable of doing. So that was kind of the focus going into Kona. That I just wanted to have the best race I could have. So training, I had a couple epic gravel rides. I did a 150 miler, which was the longest I've ever ridden any bike.
Yeah. How many
Um,
hours was that?
Geez,
It
how
had to be
many
like
was it?
11, 12 hours or
Yeah,
something,
oh, it
right?
was, yeah, and it had rained the night before, so
Mucky
it
mud and all that.
it was, oh man, the worst part, it was a very rolly course, which normally would, I don't mind rolly courses,
Yeah.
but you got no speed going downhill because you're just like
The,
quicksand.
the wheels weigh 400 pounds with all the
Yeah,
muck on them. And yeah.
yeah, and it's like riding through like kitty litter that's like clumping. It's,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I mean, I remember doing that, and I'm like, this is this is like such good training for Kona. This is so hard. Um, I mean, I was just absolutely exhausted, but I was having a great time. I paired up with another woman who happened to be pregnant and doing the race, which really
Wow.
I admired. So, I mean, it was super hard, but at no point was it not fun. It was great exercise, and so those were the big, and I had a couple of those gravel races, and a couple ultras, really hard ultra that I did at Pikes Peak. You know, all those were hard, but in no way did they feel like hard training workouts. And, that was the kind of thing that I needed from Jim, is like, he just worked that into my training plan. So yeah, they were hard, but they were fun, and they were still like achievements in their own right. I think, for me, so none of the kind of the athletic part of the build to Kona was to me um, unpleasant. Maybe
Do you think that's because you had this giant, um, enormous, I'm not going to say a lifetime goal to get to Kona, but since, you've done a few Ironmans, I mean, you know what's out there at the end if you have a great day. Did you feel like this great, this race was out there for you and you're just like, I'm going to get to enjoy this. I mean, this is going to be awesome. And this isn't really work. It's fun, right?
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Absolutely. And I think as soon as it starts to not be fun, like that's like the biggest red flag. And I mean, I just kind of want to emphasize that that was a concern of mine when I got into triathlons and I got a coach. And to be able to find a coach that has been able to work with me in a way that's kept all this fun and sustainable, like that's been the most important part.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And I think, just the coach athlete relationship, it definitely has a lot to do with communication, understanding each other, and knowing when to push someone's buttons, and say, okay, you're great at climbing hills, but you never go hard on the flats. Like it's time to do some of that, or vice versa, right?
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
I think a good coach can pull that out of somebody and, get you to race your best. And, if you're having fun, like I hope all my athletes think like you do, that they're excited for a race and it doesn't feel like work and it's fun. I'm sure many of them will tell you they want to throw their bike, across the lawn when they finish the last long ride, but I think that's pretty normal.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, if you're
yeah,
not having fun, it's not sustainable.
no,
And
I
like
agree. I agree.
sustainability is the key to endurance sports.
Yep.
So if you can't find that sustainability, that's when you're gonna have challenges.
Right. Well, tell me about the race. Tell me like what
Yeah.
the best part of it was, the hardest part, like, did you have any moments of like, why am I doing this? Or, you
I
know,
promised myself at no point would I let that thought come into my mind. It's
that's
like
that's
I
strong.
worked.
That's some strong mental strength right there.
um, I mean, I got to Kona the Saturday, so the race was on Saturday. So a week before,
Yep.
I really, I mean, so much of the race and kind of telling you about it is not just race day. It's just the whole
The
experience
build
of the
up and the
week.
experience.
Yeah. So I wanted to have the whole experience. It was like triathlon
Yeah.
heaven for a week, and you're around people. Like, I think normally I like to be kind of on my own, a little bit more quiet,
Yeah,
but
low
like
key.
I wanted to be like in the action, and I
I
just
mean, you could
really,
feel the energy, right? Like a
oh,
Leahy Drive. Every morning you
oh
walk out,
man,
you feel and you
it's
see the fit bodies and people, and the spouses of the people racing are all fit, running around with the strollers, and you're just like,
yes,
oh my god, these people have
yes,
already had 9 cups of coffee, and it's 7 a.m. and this guy just finished a 10-mile run. I mean, you're just like,
that's
wow.
right. So I mean, you can't be intimidated by that kind of thing, and you have to
Right,
just do your own thing. But that
right.
certainly was everywhere, and just fun to be part of that. And I mean, I think the fact that this was a all women's race, I have nothing to compare it to, but for world championship, but it it was just different. It was like I think the focus, you knew just the women were racing, and I don't know. I think it just gave it a little bit different flavor. But and it was like I thought it was just a pretty supportive environment. Like everyone was really happy to be there and didn't feel competitive. Just like we're all here having a great time. So yeah, it was great to be able to do those kind of easier taper workouts.
Hmm.
It was to do them on a Lee Drive or the Queen
Right.
K or in swimming. I actually enjoyed swimming for the first time, like swimming in
Well,
Kona.
I always tell people, like, when you get in at Digny Beach and you do a swim, it's like swimming in an aquarium. I mean, there's so many
Yeah.
fish, and you're just like, this
Yes.
is wild.
Yes. So it
It's
was
so cool.
it was fun to just be able to do workouts there and be around the people, and they had um a full distance swim
Oh, right.
Sunday before the race, and I mean that to me was so helpful. You got to swim the course. I think one of the hardest or most stressful parts of triathlon is just when you're starting, and to know exactly what to expect. Like I was not at all stressed when I started the swim. So that really helped. And then just kind of the events like the banquet, they have the
Yeah.
underpants run. I mean, just like fun things like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Did
so
you during the race, so you're out there and you're
Mhm.
biking up and down, in town, you bike out and back, and then you go up Palani and, obviously all that. Do you feel like it was more males out there cheering for you, or do you feel like it was still a mix? Because I mean, on the video cover,
yes,
it was all guys. It was like all guys watching this race.
yeah, I mean, I actually wasn't paying attention, but I think now that
Yeah.
you mention it, that was that was more the case.
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure. Right. Right.
Yep. Yeah. So,
What was
I
the
mean,
hardest part?
yeah, the hardest part was it being over.
Oh,
It's so fun, right?
yeah. You don't want it to
But
end.
I think, you know, there was really, I can think of one moment that was really hard. I mean, I was in the last wave to start.
Hmm.
So I mean, I even the bike, like I was just trying to be so conservative because I didn't know what the heat was going to do to me on the run, and I really felt like the only way this race could go bad for me is if like I was just like toast and had to start walking on the marathon or something, or I got GI distress. Like that was my biggest concern. So like I just need to save energy for the marathon. So the bike was, I had no issues on the bike. The run, it was after you kind of do an out and back in town on a lead drive, and then you go up on the Queen K, and it's just like this endless road, and you just rode your bike on it, and it's like that took me like 5 minutes, and now you're running for what seems like forever, and it was
I
just
mean, it
so,
literally takes you 80 to 90 minutes to get back up there
yeah,
from
that's
when you start the
yeah,
run. And yeah,
yeah. I mean, I think I was at the time I was thinking this is by far the hardest road marathon I've ever done. Because it wasn't just the heat, it was the humidity. I mean, it
yeah.
was just so
Well, the
humid.
ground is so hot, it just bakes the
Oh,
asphalt. It's
yeah.
like every step is
You're
just
just it's just so hot. Um and I mean, I knew that coming in, but like you can't really
you can't practice
appreciate
it.
it.
You
Yeah,
can't
you
train.
can't.
Right, right.
And honestly, like I've always had an appreciation for the pros that do it, but I'm like, how the heck did they run? Like, I mean, granted, they're running earlier in the day, so that probably helped. But
For sure, for
um,
sure.
I, I mean, I thought so that middle part of the marathon for me on Queen K on the out part, that was when I was like, I felt like mentally, I felt like I was at mile 20 and I was only like at mile 10, and it
Yeah,
just seemed, yeah,
that section, like once you crest Polani, you take a left in the Queen K, and then you go past all the crowds. And then for a couple miles, it's just you. It's an aid
yeah,
station, and then it's you and an aid. That's it. I mean, there's nothing
yep,
else out there.
right.
And you're
Except
just
you
looking
just
around for somebody to say, come on, Karen, let's go.
well, you just see this string of runners as far as you can see, and you're like, oh, I got to get all the way out there.
Yep.
But
Yep.
then you finally, it's like the energy lab turn off. It's like it's like how far away is this? It just felt like forever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
as I was turning down there, and that was probably my favorite part of the whole race. Um, the sun started setting. It got a little breezy. I mean, it just started to get cooler. It was so beautiful. And then you actually got down by the energy lab, and I mean, it was like perfect time with the sunset, and it was I was going faster now because it's cooler, and they had there were the people out at the aid stations just had the music jacked. You could hear it like all over, and it was like 80s music. It was great. Perfect for the moment. So just kind of, I remember running down there by the energy lab with the music blaring, and you're out there, you're just with the other athletes, and you're doing this thing in Hawaii, and now you've kind of you're more than halfway, so you're feeling better, and and then from then on, it was like those last few miles of the marathon were much faster for me, and in the
Yeah.
dark, which I was
Well, it's
happy about.
cooler, right? It's
Oh,
cooler.
it made such a difference.
I mean,
So
your quads are starting to break down, and you're like, how many more miles do I have in my legs?
yeah. So I mean, I physically I felt good, and I think that was another thing that I've learned in these Ironmans is, especially on the run, there's often a period of time where I feel like, oh, how am I going to make it? And like those times pass, and like I get through it, and it's like I get my second wind, and I feel good again. Like that happened at Coeur d'Alene. So I think, I mean, it may not happen that way every time, but I think I've been through some of those tough times, and knowing that they'll pass, that like it's easier to push through them. It's like don't let this get to you. Like you're gonna start feeling better, and sure enough, I did. So
Do
yeah,
you
it was.
so going back to your ultras, like can you make a comparison from the late, late in an ultra to the end of the Ironman? Was it the same kind of feeling? And like, what were you could you draw off that experience late in the Ironman and say this ultra I went 100 miles or this is not only 26, right?
Yeah, well, I think in the ultras, especially the long like 100K, 100 mile, I mean, your body truly does start to break down, and it's just like it it you it's it's a lot more mental. I'd say because like your body just can't give much more, and so you just have to push on mentally. Um, I think negative splitting 100 miler is like impossible even for the best of them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so I think for the marathon, I mean, I was confident. So what, knowing that I've done these even longer runs, I mean, now it sounds like so silly. Not, I never thought I'd be saying something like this, but a marathon really doesn't seem like that long a run for me at this point. So, it's like I've done this distance many times. It's just a matter of getting to the finish line, and it doesn't seem far away when you're doing 50 milers. It's like, well, that's like halfway through a race. So I think it's just changed. It's made a marathon more like a 5K for me, versus in the past it was a marathon, an actual marathon and a 5K. So
Yeah, I mean, it changes your perspective for sure.
it does. So that changes your mentality. So I think that's what, I mean, that's helped in terms of doing ultras. It's like you can just kind of mentally say, like, this is not that far. I mean, it is, but it's not as far as some of those ultras.
So years ago, we had the DECA Ironman. I don't know if you know about that or not, but it's
Was
24
that 10
miles.
sports?
What's that?
Was that 10 sports?
No, it's 10 Ironmans. You do a 24-mile swim, an 1,100-mile bike, and then a 262-mile run. And it was based in Alabama, and I'm not sure they still have it, but it was pretty popular. Not pretty popular, but there were some
Trying to give
crazies
me
who did it.
ideas? Is that your
might be
plan
you.
here?
Yeah, you might want to get out there and try that.
Well, some of these, like, I guess, what do they call it? Extreme tries or ultra tries?
The Ultraman, right?
The Ultraman, yeah. That requires a 10K swim. That would be, yeah.
That's
which
a few
I
hours.
could do, but it's, yeah, right. I don't know if I could do it.
But you'd
I
love
think I
the
could do
bike.
it.
I mean, the bike is, it's it ends up being 70 and then a 170, I think. And then the 50, and you run the double marathon the last day from Hawaii back into Kona. So you'd like that.
I think I would like that. I mean, I think now you do Kona. I mean, that's definitely the top of, that's like the pinnacle. So it's like, well, what do you do now? I mean, I don't.
Yeah. Would you want to go back to Kona?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But, I think it's always, I mean, that's always been a fun part of sports for me. It's like, okay, now what's the next thing? And there's plenty of other things out there to do. And it, I have no doubt I will continue to do triathlon and Ironman, but so much of what's been fun about this is there was always a challenge. I was always kind of pushing myself more than I thought I was capable of doing. So now I got to find more of those things. Something beyond that. Yeah. So, and even, I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be a more distance. It's just something different.
Something different, right? Off-road triathlon, off-road Ironman, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll,
well, there's gravel nationals. You know about that, right?
I did those, actually. I did it.
Oh, you did that. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. I came in third, but to be fair, there was only 3 in my age group.
Well, that's okay. It's still a podium finish, so it doesn't matter. All right. So just to wrap up, let's say you meet somebody who's new to the sport. What advice do you give them to get going in something like this?
Yeah, I think it's really, given all that I've done now, and probably if you're listening to this, thinking all the things that like I've done and how, endurance wise, like you got to remember, like I was never an endurance person. I mean, a long run for me was like a run around the bases. I hated running. It was just like those t-shirts say, my sport is your sport's punishment. Like I hated it. There was nothing about me that would have ever thought this was going to be something I would do and do to the level and do at the level I'm doing it. So, I tell people that now and they really just, because I see people like me, 12 years ago. And they just can't believe it. I'm like, you believe it? Like, I never thought I would do this. Like, never. Same with Boston Marathon. Like, I remember hearing about that in college, being like, that's impossible to qualify. So, so I say to people starting out, I was in that place where, like, this was absolutely not something I ever thought I could do, or even wanted to. And just, it's something that just built up over time. Some people maybe want to get through the process and get to the Ironman distance right away. And that, go for it. But I think in general, you got to think of, if you want to do this stuff, you think more in terms of years, in terms of what you want to accomplish. I think you're just kind of putting bricks in the wall and building a foundation for yourself. And that you really can't, maybe you can do that for a couple of months, but you really need many years of endurance sports to get your body ready. And it's just something that takes time. And, at this point of my fitness, I think I could pretty much gear up for an Ironman within a few week block. Like my base fitness is high enough where my body can endure those distances and just kind of be out there all day. I'm not going fast, but just being out there all day, like my body is very used to that. So I think the other piece of advice is like, don't expect that to come right away. I mean, that's something that's going to come over years of time, but you will get there. And then once you get there, it's just everything, it just seems so much more possible.
I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. And a lot of people want to rush it, and that's just great advice. People do, they see it and anything is possible. I want to do an Ironman in 6 weeks and 6 months. And I'm like, let's do a sprint. Let's build it up. And people have a hard time with that. They don't understand, it's like studying, right? Like, the professor doesn't give you the textbook on the second week of class and says, okay, we're having the finals today. Like, you've got 9 months to prepare. And Ironman is the same thing, right? And you have great advice because, myself and the other coaches, we talk about this all the time. Oh, I got a new athlete. They want to do an Ironman like next week. And you're like, okay, listen, you need to build into this, and your body will give you so much more if you treat it right. Right. And if you abuse it, you're going to get injured, and then it's no fun and all that stuff.
And I think that, something else that's important. I mean, I'm 46 now. I didn't get into this until my mid 30s. And part of why it's fun is I still feel like I can get better even though I'm getting older. Like, it's just, I think people maybe think, oh, do I have time to kind of wait for my body to adapt? I mean, I feel like I'm in the best shape of my life. Like, my body very much can handle this even though I'm getting older.
And your best days are ahead of you. I mean, you can still get stronger and faster, and there's no question.
I feel that way. I still feel like I can get faster times, and that, there'll be a day when that changes. And maybe I'm delusional right now, but who knows? But, I think also, it's something that I like because aging, unlike team sports, like aging really doesn't have to factor into what you can do. And then you're always racing against people your age. So it makes the competition doable.
Right. It's comparable for sure.
And so that's part of the sustainability piece that, anyone that's going to succeed at this has to make it fun and sustainable.
Right. Well, thanks so much for coming on with us. Safe travels home, and look forward to seeing you when you get back.
Okay.
And what's on the schedule for next year?
I don't know yet. I'm looking forward to finding some new adventures. Ski season, I think, is A Basin open yet? I'm expecting it'll be open by the time
after Thanksgiving. I think it'll open up. So in a couple more weeks. Yeah. I did see some snow up there though.
That's good. Good. So
it'll be happening.
I will find some epic adventures. I would like to qualify for Boston again. That was an amazing experience, especially being a Mass native. I want to do that again for sure. So that's awesome. One goal I have. Yeah.
Awesome. All right.
I qualified this year, but I didn't make the cut. 11,000 people.
Oh, how much did you miss about it?
Oh, a couple minutes, but it was like 5:37 or something. You had to be under your qualifying time.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway,
well, more people are doing it, so it's getting harder, right? The numbers are getting bigger.
I want to actually run the race this time, not just qualify.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Trust the Process. If you have a question on anything related to triathlon, please send me an email at mike@d3multisport.com. We'd love to hear from you. Make it a great day.